Welcome back to the class. And let's continue with the subject of project finance. We did not complete the subject in my last lecture. We went about halfway. There's another half of it left now. And this is about project finance. And whereby the bank is relying on the cash flow from the project itself to get the money back. And somewhere today in my lecture, I will go further from there, that is one extreme case where the bank takes over all the risk, but there are other types of project finance where the bank takes half the risk. And I'll explain to you what does that mean. And then there's another kind, which I would say, essentially the bank takes part of the risk, and then if the company does not pay back the loan, then they can ask the company to get money from some other sources other than the project, and to pay back the loan. So there are different types of project financing techniques that we will talk about today, okay? But before that, what did we cover today was, or yesterday was, trying to reflect what are the advantages and disadvantages of project finance. We talked about what are the characteristics of a project and that would be considered acceptable to the bank. Essentially what it is whatever you or I, who are the sponsors of the project, think I need, or you need, whoever is the sponsor, and to initiate the project, to get it started and completed. Essentially, pretty much, it's the same thing the bank wants to know. Why did you decide on the project? And they want to know whatever you wanted to know before you started. It's common sense, of course. Now, having said that, I'm going to talk about a subject which is a bit of repetition, not all of it, from where we left off last time. I wouldn't say all of it, but some repetition. And the question comes up, what bankers look for in project loan application. You go to the bank, you apply for the loan, and then there's an application, of course. And what is it that the bank looks for? Say that your resume, you send your CV or resume to the company that you want to work for. They're going to look at your qualification. Essentially, it'll be what is your education background, what is your experience, and so on and so forth. And so in this case, what is the banker looking for in a project that they think will satisfy the requirement that this is a good project. And they're not only looking at the project itself to say it's okay, but they're being extra careful, and that is, they want to know, are there other sources of funds besides the one that they're lending against the project, so they're giving the money against that project, but they want to know, what if this goes back? Are there other requirements? Are there other places that you have to furnish the debt? Maybe you've taken loan for another project from somebody else, and that means your debt service requirement would be both for the other project and this project. And so they want to know, tell us about the other project. Will you have enough cash flow to service both the projects? This one we are giving you the money for, and the other one. I use the word service. Service means that you will be able to provide the debt service, the principal and the interest for both the projects. That's what it means. Okay. So let us touch on a few points of what bankers look for. Obviously, if you're going to put up the reserves of oil and gas as security for the project, and the foremost question is all logical. The banker would want to see to show us the reserve. Remember, we spent a fair amount of time talking about the different categories of reserve last time. and proved developed, proved, proved reserve, proved developed, proved undeveloped. Then we went into proved developed producing, proved developed non-producing, and the shut-in, okay, and behind the pipe, all those categories. The bank looks at them to be presented to them, just not they've got 100 million barrels of oil. No, in reserve, no. They want to know how much of the 100 million is what percentage, one way to look at it, is producing reserves, what percentage is shut in, and they like to know that particularly the producing one, because they generate cash right now, cash flow. So their focus is tell us about that, because that is what they know they're going to get it now, because the project is producing oil and gas from those reserves. So that is less risky, and they want to see the categories. And each category has a different level of risk in their mind. They're being the bank. Okay, there's no hard and fast rule that they'll give you 100% producing and 50% of this. No. It's a judgment call. Judgment. Each bank looks at it differently. There's no right or wrong about it, and so that's the one thing they want is to see if you can provide to them, as I'm repeating now, the reserve categories divided into developed and so on. They would like to, whatever I'm saying is simple common sense. You don't have to be a super genius. Basic common sense. And everything I've taught is basic common sense. They want to know what about the infrastructure. Do you have the pipeline? As an example, can you reach the market, or can you use offshore? The infrastructure or remote area, infrastructure becomes super. If it's a remote area on land, they want to know how many bridges they have to cross to get to the lease block where they have to go. Are there even bridges? Are there roads on the way? All these, and I can go on and on what includes this infrastructure, especially in case of remote location, the availability, the existence of the infrastructure becomes super critical in the assessment. They want to know how you're going to construct the thing from inception, from the start to the end. Inception means from the start, very beginning. And the acronym they use, abbreviation is to refer to this construction into 4 phases, referring, and I'm going to explain that. They call it E, P, C, M. I'll repeat again. E as in Edward, P as in Peter, C in caliber, or C as in, I don't know, C as in cost, M as in Mexico. What does that mean, E, P, C, M? So they want to know how you're going to carry out E, meaning engineering functions. P is procurement. C is how you're going to undertake the construction. And M stands for management, how you're going to manage the whole thing. So they're looking at these various aspects of engineering, procurement, construction, and management. How are you going to take the project from the drawing board, from the inception? Drawing board is an English word for from the start to reality, when it really begins to function. Okay? All these are aspects we have to take to the bank. Let's have 2, 3, 4 more, and then we'll have to go to another subject. They talk about, to ask you, they will ask you a question about the costs that you think is going to cost you to build the project. The cost estimates, critical to them. There are 2 kinds of costs. 2 kinds they're looking at. One is the capital cost. The other one is the operating cost. The capital cost, sometimes called CapEx, operating costs, sometimes called OPEX. So the question is, what confidence do you have, you're the borrower, in estimating what it would cost to build the project, what it would cost to drill the well? How confident are you? How did you come up with that estimate, whatever it is? Let's look at it. You're going to inquire a lot about how did you come up with the capital costs? Did you look at similar projects to determine the capital cost for this project that you borrowed against? What kind of confidence you have in all of this? And equally, if more important, they want to look at the operating costs. Once the project has started, it's ongoing, 10, 20, 30 years. Fields last 10, 20 years easily in all that field. And you're going to be operating them, it's going to cost you in the 10, 20 years into the inflation and all that is going to play a role in it. And they want to know what? Have you got any reason to estimate the operating cost the way you have? What is the basis for your saying that after 5 years, the operating cost for this field is this? Now you're talking into the future, right? Capital cost is now in the past. Once the project is complete, the capital cost stop. You drill the well, now you go home, go drill another well somewhere else. Then the capital cost transferred into operating cost. Most people, no, I won't say most. Sometimes more emphasis is placed not by the bank, but the people who got the sponsors of the project on capital cost, not as much in the operating. And I said, no, differently. I don't know why they pay less attention to operating cost other than to speculate. Speculate. Just imagine, just a conjecture thing. Because capital costs, operating costs, unlike capital costs, are small amounts that you every year, every month, every week, every year. Okay, salaries of this and salaries of that. But capital costs are large sums of money. In the first 3-4 years, if the offshore project, 3 years, it may cost you $10-20 million. So that gives you capital costs, $20 million. But the problem they don't realize is, it is the operating costs that define the life of the well. If your operating costs are higher than the revenue coming from the well, from the field, from the project, you stop producing because you have the negative after that. Yet we tend to pay more attention to capital costs because the large sum is a psychological thing. I'm thinking, I don't know, you'll have to ask somebody who thinks that way, but it's like $20 million, oh, that's a lot of money. But then you forget, the operating cost is over the life. It's every day, every week, every month, every year, over 30-year period. That adds up to horrendous, tremendous amount of money. But the governing factor, please remember that. The important factor to remember is that this is where people don't understand this, right? That the operating costs establish the life of the well. If the life is what, if the revenues are coming in at less amount, then the operating costs, you shut down the project. It would be foolish to run the project in a loss after that. I spent a lot of time in one section of my agreements course. In fact, last time when they were meeting, last Thursday, last Friday, we had it done. I gave them a cash flow, a real question, what is the economic life of the well? And not economic life. I said simply defined by when your operating costs are such that they are more than the revenues coming, the well stop producing, or you tell them well to stop producing. And I do cash flow and all that. Very important part of the other lecture. That leads to some policy question. What should we do in that case? How do we fix that problem? And what do governments do? That's a different kind of course completely. There we will talk about different governments behaving differently. How do they provide incentives? How do they, it's a different course, of course. It's expected to be a different course. But this aspect, what 1/10 of 1% of that could be repeated there, what I'm talking about now here. So if you ever happen to take that course, many students take both of them, one after the other. And you'll see in that case that I had already talked about this in that course, if you happen to take it in the future. Okay. Now we're still on the subject of what do bankers look for in project loan application? The marketing assumptions. I think I talked about it before. The market for your oil and gas, and I said to you, remember, just because you are able to produce oil and or gas does not mean everybody's waiting for your oil and gas. I gave you, I think, the example of 1979, whatever, so 31 million barrels were produced. There was a demand for that. In 1983, 17 or something million barrels were produced, as 14 million barrels was surplus production capacity in OPEC alone. Nobody wanted that oil. It was a desperate situation for OPEC. I'm going to talk about that under oil price. What did they do? This, what I'm just citing now, is a prelude, meaning this will be discussed in detail when I talk about oil price. We have not talked about oil price yet. I'm still debating in my mind, oil price, should I do that next time, or should I do mergers and acquisitions? Both are very interesting, very important subtopics. And I will have very, very unusual, interesting, different views on both the subjects. And when you hear me, you say, oh my goodness, this is something that you never heard of. It won't be that I'm right or wrong. That's not the question. Up front, I'll say to you in the lecture, both of them, just because I'm saying it does not make me right, it does not make me wrong. This will only give you another way to look at oil price and acquisition merger. That's all. I do that all over the world. In fact, and last night an email came to me from overseas. And they're asking, these are very senior government officials. And in fact, the oil minister, I mean, you're talking as high as it can go. And they are last night. And said, Dr. Malik, when can we come? No, I said, I'm not going anywhere. If COVID nonsense, I'm not coming. They wanted me to come to Dubai. They'll meet. I said, no, I'm not going to Dubai. Not worth the risk. Can we come here? I said, yeah, you can come here. So we established the date last year in September. I gave them the date. They bought the tickets. Come to Houston. They listen to me for 2 weeks. 8 hours a day. 8 hours a day. You hardly get 2 hours with me. They get, in a week, they get 8 hours every day for 2 weeks. Can you imagine how much information goes back? So I got an email last night. Then I canceled it last September because then COVID took off. Oh, right away. I said, let's stop it. I can't take the risk. I'm sorry. I apologize. Say what you want. I cannot invite you here and then you have a problem. I have a problem. No. So recently you might have read in the newspaper, heard that this COVID business in Austin area is decreasing. And Omicron, very good. Immediately, the next day when they heard the news is coming, next morning I got an email from them. Now that it is going down and it's gone on, when can we come? And last night they asked me, make it sooner than later. Give us a date. But the point I'm making here is that they will get different views from what everybody hears. That's why the people come here. Because I tell them my views are different, not right, wrong, they're different on the subject of oil price and others. Then I said, once you've heard that, then it is for you to decide whether you want to accept my views or their views, or whoever they are. Not that I'm right. That doesn't mean I'm right. It's a different point of view. So very soon, I'm probably definitely after finishing the semester here and teaching you folks. Don't think you're going to be having a good time, flying around the world. No, I'll back to work because they're coming over. I've not given them this last night, and I'm waiting when to invite them. Definitely be after the final exam, no doubt. And I've graded you guys. Can't because I take my mission at the university. You folks very seriously. I would not cut short on what I plan to teach you guys. To me, it is serious. I believe in that. Okay. Now, that is when we talk about oil price and OPEC. How I got into this, I don't know. What I said was OPEC in 1983 had to take a big decision. They did take a big decision to make the oil that they were able to produce. Remember? 31 down to 17, they were able to produce 31, no market for 17, market only for 17 million. So what did they do to increase the market, the selling? How did they increase the demand for oil to counter the surplus? When I talk oil price, you'll hear it, okay? I guarantee you. Another aspect of the project, the bank is going to look at is this project that they're lending against, will it have enough cash flow to satisfy many things? Financial things. You have to know, will it be enough, generating enough revenue to cover the operating costs? And I've talked about operating costs being so important. If there's not enough revenue, that's the end of the project. So not that. Is there enough revenue coming in? They want to know, of course, everything is common sense, folks. What were the tax payments? Will the project have enough cash flow, paying the operating costs that satisfy the government? Pay the taxes. Another thing the bank is going to know is, what about debt service obligations, commitments? That means if we, the bank, give the money to the sponsor, borrower, they want to know how in the world are you going to service debt, the principal, the interest. So it's going to be, are there enough money left after the operating costs, after the taxes, so that we can satisfy us, the bank, and pay the principal loan amount and the interest on that loan? All these things and many more the bankers will look at. Remember. Not only on one scenario, they'll pick some, what if, scenarios, what if the price goes down? Will they have enough money for all of these 4 factors I listed now, 3 factors? What if the price goes down further? Where is the break point? Where before, if it goes below that, they cannot service us. That's what matters to them. So under various scenarios, and that is done through what is called sensitivity analysis. I hope you know that. Sensitivity analysis to establish the risk. And I'm going to talk about risk also in a minute. What is the bottom line? Where the price goes below that, the sponsor, the borrower will not be able to service it. They will not be able to pay us back the loan. Okay. All these things are important to them. Now, having said all of this above, Let me then, hope you've written it, give you a reference from where I got this information. It's in the book. Remember the book that you all have purchased? I hope you have. It's reference number 22 in that book. 22. And the title of the reference number 22 is What Bankers Look For in Project Loan Application. That's the name, that's the title. What bankers look for in project loan application. Or just number 22. So you can tell now in the last couple of lectures that I've been giving you references to where I get this information, or most of it. So now you begin to feel that your whatever you spent on the book, I don't think it was expensive. I don't know how much you paid for that, but it's really worth what I'm telling you. If you ever want to be in the banking/finance area or understand something about dealing with the banks and you want to go there and how do you borrow and all that, you come into that also. And so I'm already giving you references. In the first half, when I was defining terms and all that, I could not, because I couldn't find one place where I could find all the 30 definitions that I could say, go to that reference number, this, that, the other, and get all of them. Because I was searching, finding, many sources, because to me, I wanted to just focus the program and teach about the concept and definition, only what applies to this course. Otherwise, we could be sitting there forever, going over energy finance. Okay. All right. The next subject is risk associated with project failure. I'm looking at it from both sides. Whatever I'm looking from the bank side, I'm looking at it from the sponsor side. Both are equally afraid. Or what if the project doesn't continue as we thought it would? Or it's a bad project. So there are many reasons for a project to fail. Can we cover all of them? No. Why not? Because this is not a course only about risk analysis and projects. If it were, probably I could use a whole semester on that. This is where I give you a little feeling, an idea, which I think should be enough. And what are the risks involved in from project finance, both from the bank's point of view and also from the sponsor's point. When I say sponsor, I mean the people who could start the project, the company point of view. Let's talk about a few of the risks. Number one, delay in completion of the project. Delay in completing the project on time. What is the problem with that? It's a big, very big risk. Because what happens? If the project is delayed, is there any revenue coming from the project now to pay back the bank, the loan, the debt service? No. What's the problem? You're not paying back the interest on the loan because you don't have any revenues, because the project is delayed. So the interest begins to build up, compounding. So the interest expense continues to go up and up and up and up. That's a serious problem. You're compounding the interest because the project is just delayed. I think I mentioned somewhere along the way that the South Texas nuclear project from where we receive our electricity, I think I did, was supposed to start in 1981. I was intimately involved with that project. So I should know a little bit about it. And it was started in 1981. That means there are 2 units, two units to generate electricity. The second unit was supposed to generate electricity in 1982. Okay. Guess what? That, and it was going to cost $1 billion, billion dollars. I think I gave you that. So what happened? The project, the facts, these are actual facts, because I was involved with the project. I should know, it's not like knowledge from somewhere else. The project was delayed and delayed and delayed. So instead of the first unit starting in 1981, when did it start? 1986. The second unit was supposed to start in 1982. It started in 1987. What's the problem? That means no electricity generated, no cash flow, no revenue. So the companies could not, the cost overrun because there was no revenue. So the bank had to wait to start getting the loan back, and the interest to the money was not going to the bank because there's no revenue coming in. There's no interest payment to the bank. And it kept accruing, adding and adding and adding. And the project, which was supposed to be for $1 billion, ended up costing $6.2 billion. $6.2 billion. It's 40, 50 years back. This could be 25 billion now. Can you imagine what delay did? Of course, partly was that. There were other reasons also. We won't get into the details of that. But part of the reason for this enormous increase to $6 billion, part of the reason, because the interest that was not going to the bank was kept accruing. The bank was keeping saying, well, you didn't pay the interest, let's add it to the last year, and the cumulative. So the delay can be a killer. Excuse me, please. Can be a killer. This ties to number 2. It's the number 1 risk. Cost overrun, they go together. That's the second risk. Not correctly estimating the cost. Being too optimistic. Optimism is good. Too much can cause a lot of problem. Technical failure of the project could also result in serious problems. Financial failure of the sponsor. Not one who puts up the equity is the sponsor, or he's supposed to put up 20% of his own money. What if you start the project and the bank finds that they don't have enough money? So whatever money they spent is useless now. You can't generate electricity with half of what their turbine. You can't. You can't get oil production when you go only halfway. The target depth is 10,000 feet. You can't make that lucky and get the oil. What if you stop after 5,000 feet? Are you going to start producing it? No, of course not. I don't have to explain that. And number 5, the government interference is also a problem. Government steps in and sometimes for no, I don't know why they do. They interfere for no rhyme or reason. But before you can build anything, before you can build anything, you have to have a government approval. Even my backyard, I got like a very large backyard, you can't see it, quite large. It's got a slope. It's got stairs. I think it's like three stairs, like 3 feet. 3 feet. For that too, there's a rule and regulation, there must be a railing. Can't you imagine to hold on? You're going down like a baby can go down 3 stairs, but the government says we've got to have a railing so that you have to hold on to them. Some regulations are necessary and are good. Many regulations are unnecessary and a headache. I'm telling you frankly. You'll realize when you're going to realize. So what happens is that government interference. The inspector for the government will come and measure, how many stairs do you have? You don't have the stairs, you can't put a railing, and you can't enter the house because now you're not complying with the rules and regulations. And your house is complete, but you can't enter, you can't sleep in it because they have not fulfilled some basic requirement, which sometimes I find is unnecessary. Too much of it. Oh heavens, number 6. Uninsured casualty losses. Please pay attention to that. We have about 3/4 of a million attorneys in this country. I'm not saying anything good or bad about them. I'm just stating a fact. And they're doing very well financially. For heaven's sake, that's a lot of money. I would guess that if you take all the attorneys of the world and put them together, they'd be less than all attorneys in America. I'm guessing, I don't know. Because we have a system in some countries that would not be allowed to work on a contingency, meaning what? If the attorney wins the case, they don't. If they lose the case, if I'm harmed and I hire an attorney and they lose the case, I don't have to pay him anything. So I win the case, he can give me maybe half the money. But if he wins the case and it's $1 million case, he'll probably take 1/3 of $1 million as fee. That is called working on the contingency. Do I win? Attorney says, I'll charge you 1/3, roughly, I'm just giving an idea. And if I do, you don't. So as a result, everybody and every Johnny and his friend is all litigating. We probably more litigious society anywhere in the world. In some countries, that is legal, illegal, illegal. Work like that under that condition. Here, anybody, you can. Oh, I don't want to give my own example. You might sue me or something. Anybody can sue anybody for anything. If you wear a blue shirt and somebody says, "Oh no, I'm going to sue you because I've done the blue shirt," and you irritate me, so you can hire an attorney and go to the judge because he irritated me. And he's wearing a blue shirt, and I don't like blue color. It gives me a little headache. Wow. I bet you get 10 attorneys will take that case. So but if you have insurance, then the insurance company will take over. So that's what I said. Uninsured casualty losses. They have an insurance. Make sure you have insurance. Not insured, darling. Don't come to me for asking money to bail you out. Poor management. I've talked about the importance of management more than once, I think. A good management can make the project bloom, big, beautiful. A bad management can kill the project. A good project, they can kill it. And finally, there could be many more risks, but I'll give you one more. I'll give you an example, an exaggerated example, get you to begin to appreciate what kind of risk come along in this project business financing is. I'll read it. Overly optimistic appraisal of the value of the oil and gas reserves in the ground. Overly, more than necessary, more than realistic is overly. Overly optimistic. Optimism is good. I believe in it. Live a life of all, but overly can be tragically bad sometimes. I'll give you an example. Overly optimistic appraisal, thinking that there will be oil and gas reserve, and you're very optimistic about it. Overly, optimistic is okay, but the overly can be a killer. Let me give you an example to illustrate this in real life. Okay, which I've dealt with when I joined banking. Okay, so let me give you an example. Before that, I'm going to do something in the board. Okay, right on the board at the back. Let me write something down, and you can take down if you want. But this example is not in the book. And then once you've done it, taken it, then I'll talk. Okay, I'll give you time to write it down. Please draw this. Here is showing you, here is the oil production from a field, oil production on this axis. Annual, monthly, doesn't matter. In barrels, this is annual production. Maybe we call it annual. Okay. This is here at the bottom, here. You can't see it. This is present. Now, present. This is today. This is historical. This happened in the past. And from today, this is production. Oh, no. Sorry, go right away. The present that goes on in the future. Then I repeat, this is the production on this axis, the time on this axis, historical, this is present, past production, and from here is the forecast. This is the forecast, Let's talk about it. And I've actually seen something like that. You can listen. Two respectable, good, experienced production engineers, reservoir or any kind of petroleum engineers, are given this information about historical production, look at all this, and they're asked is two petroleum engineers to please tell us today, what do you think is the future production to be expected from this reserve field, from this field of the well? A good man, an experienced person, an honest man, he will tell you that you can expect from this field he will tell you to expect a good explain it. These dots represent the past production history. Okay? This engineer A, like it's called, a very good UT graduate and all that good stuff. He's told that here is a production in the past. Can you tell us, please, today, what kind of production should we expect in the future? And he'll say, well, you can expect this production. You know, the one that are back here, this under this card A. That's what it is. And this is when the petroleum is very excited because they already know what has been the production in the future. And they just extend it and say, well, this is what will be in the future, no problem. Another petroleum engineer, equally capable, honest, and again another maybe you could value, and let's call it A and value, engineer B. He's given the same information, and he's asked, come on, Mr. A&M. Well, no, that might count it. He both A and B, engineer A and engineer B are both UT graduates of less than 2%. So the other engineer B is asked from this data, please tell us what to expect in the future. He said, oh, no problem, I think. So B engineer says he to expect engineer B will tell you to expect the production, this red line, you see the red line, into the future, including, of course, this is all this here is to be expected in the future. Both are very nice individuals, very highly capable, experienced enough. Is there a difference? No, that's all. This is how they're done. I've seen thousands of them. Literally, I've seen thousands of them. Literally, I've seen thousands of these graphs. I'll tell you one in a minute. Draw that. Is there a difference between engineer A projection and in the amount of results and B amount of results? There's no limit to what the difference is. You can see, how can they be the same? How can they be correct? Who is right? Think, who's right, A or B? Both can't be right. Who's right, A or B? We don't know. When will we know who's right? When will we know who's right? When, after 20 years, the well or the field stop producing, then you go back and check how much was left to be produced under B scenario versus A scenario. Then if you say, well, maybe B was right, or maybe A was right, but it will come in way into the future. Are you going to pull up one of the engineers who was wrong and from the grave? Yes. This is how differences there are in projections. One client came to us, and I was the person in charge, 1981 or early 82, I think, long ago. They had 13,000 oil and gas wells in America. And they produced these reserves, these graphs for every single one of them for me to look at. So I've seen a lot of these. I didn't look at 13,000. I did maybe 100 or 200 as a sampling. It's not a made-up thing. This is what we call optimistic or overly optimistic. Maybe B is overly optimistic. Certainly A doesn't look very optimistic. B looks like, boy, man. You're going to the bank, if you're selling the property reserves, which one graph are you going to draw if you're selling it? Simple answer. Don't tell me you don't know. So we B, of course. And vice versa, if we're buying, you say, no, forget B, say no. You think it's a made-up story? I'll give you a real story. It happened with me. A real example. Again, I just joined banking in 81, but this is, I think it's in 82 this happened. A young engineer, well, kind of young, petroleum engineer, from UT, in fact, I knew the fellow. I can't give you his name. He came and he was representing his company. This is a real story. Explain this happened. Came to Barclays Bank and wanted loan. So then show me a decline, these are called decline curves. How much oil is there left to be produced? He said, here they are. So what I noticed was when he showed me, the reservoir and the reserves and all that, or several wells, they were not the 13,000 well story, these were different ones. What I found out was that those reserves, he was basing it on the actual case. From a formation, they were coming from a strata oil formation called the Austin Chalk. That's the name of a formation, Austin Chalk. Some amount of oil is produced in America, Texas from Austin Chalk. Austin Chalk is notorious for one thing. When you drill into the Austin Chalk, you hit a big gusher. Oh, wow, you're a happy man. You got lots of oil bursting. But the production lasts 6 months. For 6 months, you're a happy man or woman. After 1 year, the client go like this, bang, nothing. Maybe it's the lithology and all the fracture, porosity, whatever. That's not a course in porosity and permeability. So the production was, 6 months to a year, but year cut. Let's say 2 years at the maximum. After that, no. So when I looked at his future production profile, like this graph you're seeing behind me, it is shown that how much to expect from his oil reserve for which he wanted the bank. I mean, this is back in 82. Why did I keep saying 82? Because now everybody and his friend has a phone, has a computer, everywhere, it's computer. At that time, computers were very new. I mean, you could count 5 people on 5 fingers that had computers. Nobody had a computer in 82. Nobody. And whatever computer they were, there are very little capacity to do the calculation, very little. Basic Excel, something like that. But I'm talking 40 years back. So when I look at it, his reserves, it should have been between 6 months and 2 years or 2 years maximum. You know what he was showing me? How much to expect from the Austin Chalk? I can do the math in my mind. I think it was 83 years and 4 months. Let it go and let the story go, and it's a real story. So when you look at this A and B, don't be surprised. 83 years and 4 months. Can you imagine? Should have been 6 months. Funny. So I said, Nick, why did you stop at 4 months? Why don't you continue, man? It's all rubbish anyway. You know what he said? Dr. Malik? I did not stop. But then what happened? The computer stopped. I said, what do you mean computer stopped? He said, remember old time for the computer that he was using had the capacity to draw this future production profile for only 1,000 months. So the capacity of the computer was only limited to 1,000 months. Now it's like infinity. And he said, I didn't stop, the computer stopped at 83. And how much was it? 83 years and 4 months. You know why? Because if you take 1,000 months divided by 12, it comes to 83 years and 4 months. But the computer should have been 2 months, 2 years, or 1 year, it's 83 years. So this is the real story I get out of your thought. That's the point. I know it's unreal for somebody like you. It's not unreal for me because I've been there, seen it, done it, kind of a thing. So back to what we started is, in that example, the risk of overly optimistic. He was not overly optimistic. Nick was not, he was insanely optimistic. Of course, that was wrong. Wrong to me, that monstrous of fraud. So the bank looks at that. Is the potential borrower overly optimistic of what to expect? Not. Now you got an idea what are the risks involved. So let's take a usual 10 minutes, okay? And then we'll continue. At this time, let me share what I was experiencing before I started the lecture. One of my early lectures that I lectured for 2 hours, maybe a month and a half back, after a lecture and a lecture and a lecture, oh my goodness, it was a killer. The 2-hour lecture, completed it. And when we were sending it to you, to my horror, dismay, I found out that lecture was not recorded. I almost died. I had to do it again. Doing the same lecture again is a killer. You know why? I found out later on that for some reason the memory was not there to record 2 other lectures. So I had to do it again. So today again, I felt like maybe there's something about the memory. And I said, oh, I better check. So it was checked from Apple and whoever, Gmail, and I was assured, thank God, there is enough memory in this computer because it was giving the false kind of information that there's not enough. I hope I don't have to put up with that again. So I hope when I meet you in 10 minutes, that the memory is still there. I'm a little worried still, but they have assured me not to worry because believe me, lecturing again, not the first time, is the same lecture again is a killer, okay? Meet me in 10 minutes and then we'll compare. Then the next subject is going to be what are the different types of techniques, types of project financing techniques. And we're almost getting to the end of this period. 10 minutes, I'll be here. Well, I'm back. What it is take this off. If I put too much of this gooky stuff to wipe it, whatever I use, the liquid, then I have to wait for it to dry about 30 seconds. Sometime I wait so I can write again. If it's moist and wet on the board, I put too much of this stuff, liquid, it won't write. Then if I put too little, then you can't wipe it. It still has stains in the back. So I have to play that, is it too much or too little? So the question is now, what are the different types of project financing techniques? Okay, let's talk about it. The number one on the list is non-recourse. In this case, the lender, the bank, relies only on the project for the payout of the loan. To get the money back, the bank relies only on the project. Essentially, they may, if you're lucky. Normally, banks don't like to do it. If you're lucky and they do sign you a non-recourse project finance, it will normally be in the case of where no new technology is involved, where everything is tried and tested in the past, and the bank is confident that there's no new technology involved, there's a market for the product, and so on and so forth. And the management is good, nothing to worry about. They will give you a non-recourse type of financing. Non-recourse means non-recourse. That means if the project goes bad, in this case, number one type, there's no recourse of the bank to the company's other cash flow. The bank, in this case, in this type of financing, cannot say to the company, this project is bad, we're going to get after you because you got other sources of income, and we're going to get our money back, not from this project, it's bad, but from your other sources of income. There is no recourse to the other sources of income, revenues of the company, that are coming to the company, strictly based on the revenues from this very project. If you're lucky, the bank is willing to give you that type. The second type of project finance is covered by a guarantee of completion. Guarantee of completion of the project is the second type. The bank, in some cases, and in many cases, is worried, and generally so, that the sponsor, the one who's starting the project, the borrower, may never complete the project. They may, for 100 reasons. It could be uninsured insurance, uninsured losses, I just explained to you. Maybe the cost overrun was so high, from $1 to $6 billion, that the sponsor just said, not worth it, man, let's walk away from it. Whatever is wasted is a sunk cost, forgot it, and let's not waste more money after this useless project. We already spent $50 million to complete it, we'll take another $35 million. We don't want to do that. And there could be many reasons, and there are in real life, when the sponsors, with all goodwill, I'm not saying they're crooks or anything, find out halfway into the project construction phase maybe, that it's not worth pushing, what they call it, putting good money after bad. That's a very famous American expression, putting what? Investing good money after bad money. You made a wrong decision, regret it, feel sorry for yourself and keep going, but don't put any more or don't waste any more money in that project. So in that case, the bank may accept the second type of technique to finance is guarantee of completion. So the bank says, okay, you're on the hook, we'll get you money if you don't complete the project. Once you complete the project, company, don't worry. You're off the hook. You don't have to worry about it. It's then our responsibility, meaning it's the bank's responsibility. We will never get to after you've completed the project. If it goes back after you commit, no, you don't have to worry. The bank has to worry about it. But the bank wants to make sure you complete it, because the worrisome thing is, what if you leave it in the middle and the bank is then stuck with a useless, incomplete project? So they said, well, you guarantee that till the time you guarantee, till it starts producing electricity, and you are the guarantor. If something goes wrong during that period, we'll get after you. But once it's over, because they know once you've drilled the well and it's producing oil, it's going to continue bringing in revenue. So once you complete the power plant, it's going to bring in revenue. You're going to burn electricity or generate electricity. So that's one. The second type. And the third type of project financing method is project financing is supported by the company undertaking for the life of the financing. In other words, project financing is where the company is responsible, for the life of the financing. I will explain that, don't worry about it. For the life of the financing, all the responsibility is on the company. Listen to this carefully, simple. The bank is saying to the company will give you the money you want, lend you the money you want, and we expect, and we think that the project will generate enough cash flow that you will be able to pay us back the debt service. We expect that. However, however is the important part. However, if the project at any stage does not generate enough cash flow or revenue at any stage, we can, at that stage, we can jump in and take the cash flow from your other projects, revenue from, we can go to your other projects to get our money back. That means you are on the hook, you are responsible over the life of the financing until we get all our money back. Essentially, we'll get it from this project, this one. If this is not working well, we can go to your other projects and get the money from there. As far as we are concerned, you're responsible for 100% financing. But if you're still paying us from this cash flow from this project, we are satisfied. We never go after the other projects for getting the money. So let me give you the risk comparison in this case. It's common sense. What I've said here is in the case of non-recourse, the bank takes all the risk. So project goes back, bank looks at the money, not the company. So all the risk is with the bank. Takes zero risk. Zero. The second case, guarantee of completion, is 50-50, it's obvious. The bank takes, the company, well, doesn't matter. The bank takes half the risk, half of the bank, till the bank takes half the risk. Once the project is completed, then the bank takes all the risk, but till the project can be completed, half of the risk is that of the company. No, until that moment, all the risk is the company, no risk to the bank. But in essentially 50-50 is what meaning? Till completion, I say 50% risk. After completion, 50% risk. Either way, they split before and after. Before that, you take the risk. After that, I take the risk. So in a way that I would say that's sharing risk. You call it 50-50, whatever you want. They share the risk before and after. Okay, define it any way you want now. In the third case, the company takes all the risk. All the risk of the company, all of it. Because if the project goes back, the company will still have to pay the money through other sources of revenue. And in this case, there's no risk to the bank. Look at it from that angle. Essentially, the bank says, don't worry, we'll get the money from the project. But if it goes bad, we can get the money back for the loan back from other sources. So the company is on the hook, is responsible till the bank gets all the money back from this source. So that source does not matter to the bank. Okay. So here are three types of financing techniques, and I can give you a reference now. The reference is number 20 in the book. And the title is Project Financing Guidelines for Commercial Lender. Guidance. I'm tempted to go over this again. I don't know why. In the first case, non-recourse, it's all a question of sharing risk. In the first case, no sharing, all risk to the bank. In the second case, depending on you want to look at risk, you complete the project, company, till then you're carry the risk. After that, we take over, no, then it's our risk. And project number 3 is, well, it's our risk. If you don't pay up, then we'll get money from somewhere else, okay? So somewhere else that from other projects on. I've tried to explain it 2-3 different ways, and maybe I've overkilled in the explanation. Sometimes I tend to try to explain too much. And then I said, well, my goodness, man, these are senior students. Why do I have to explain so much? They already understood everything I'm saying. It's not complicated anyway. Some banks that do not have petroleum engineers in the bank. I once ran a survey shortly before I left banking, and there are about a dozen or so big banks that hire petroleum engineers full-time because they do a lot of reserve-based lending. Reserve-based lending is where you lend against the reserves in the ground, reserves of oil, gas. It's also called petroleum production loan, petroleum. And those that do a lot of reserve-based lending of reserve in the ground, they hire petroleum engineers in-house. There's so much activity in this area. If I'm correct, I ran a survey, and there were some banks in the Houston, New York area. They're big, they call them big money center banks. Essentially, they were in Houston and New York, big banks. And they would have maybe up to 10 or 12 petroleum engineers working full-time as employees of the bank. There was so much activity in this business of lending to the oil business. And then some banks don't have that much activity. They don't need a full-time engineer or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. They will hire a consultant on a case-by-case basis. Whenever there was a request for somebody's expertise, need for somebody's expertise, and there was a reserve-based lending going on, they would hire a consultant. There are many of them to come and help out. Okay. So the question is, what is the role of the independent consulting firm in project financing? What is the role? What do they do is the question, okay? Write it down. The role of independent consulting firm in project financing. Reference number 25, please. So you can see practically for every lecture, I'm giving you a reference. Things have changed from before the spring break. This is a different thing. There, I'm sorry to keep repeating. I wanted to, but I couldn't. It was not possible to give you references there, as I've explained many times. The role of the consultant, to hire one with the consultant, the bank, based on for reserves-based lending. That means for oil and gas lending based on reserves. Other than, it's common sense, it gives you an unbiased opinion, not biased opinion. So it's an independent guy, that's obviously very obvious. That's his role. They give you an unbiased opinion. Bank needs that. The consultant can exert his role, can play a role by looking at the technical viability of the reserves. Are they technically sound? Can they be technically produced? Example, how about the porosity permeability? How about the pressure condition? All this is technical. There's nothing finance there. It's technical. So they can look at the technical viability, the role they can play. They can also play in the role in economic viability. Is it going to be a good rate of return for the company? And therefore, if it's a good rate of return for the company, they'll be able to pay the loan back to the bank. So not only technical, but also economic liability. The consultant can determine the quality of the loan. The quality of the reserve. I'll give you an example in a minute. And also the quantity. Is it the amount of reserves that the borrower is claiming he or she has? Quality could mean many things. Reserve quality. Example. Is all this security of reserve in the ground, is all of it from one well, 2 wells, or 20 wells? Oil wells or gas wells or both. If one well, I'm not touching it. One well is too risky. If it goes under, I got a problem, bank. Bank has a problem, right? So that's the question. Is the reserves and the production from reserves, they're called petroleum production loans. They generate the cash flow, the revenues. If one well, it's not going to produce any revenue if it goes, it's got a problem. If it has a problem, catches fire, for example. That's the quality. The quality/risk. So all these come under the heading of the role of the consultant. Another role can be, is to look at the backup position of the borrower, the sponsor. In other words, how sound is the sponsor? What if the project is a failure? What kind of a backup position is the borrower in. Backup. In case of failure, you need something as a stopgap, as a backup. That's another role. Another role can be that the borrower comes up with a cash flow projection and says to the bank, here is the reserve calculation, here is the production profile, and this production profile generally generates so much cash flow. And from that cash flow slash revenue, we'll give you back the loan. Now what happens? What does the consultant? Well, he has to determine, it's the consultant that has to determine if the cash flow that the fellow is saying, from the borrower is saying, does it make sense given the nature of the oil reserves? Does it make sense to from a technical aspect? He said, well, I'm going to get so much revenue, and who's going to determine it's correct or not, will happen or not? The consultant said, well, I don't think, Johnny, you can do that because your reserves are not that many, or the production profile cannot be sustained to match up with your debt service repayment schedule. Very important role. Not only that, folks. The project has to be constantly monitored. Constantly, you have to monitor the project. Consultant can do that for you. You're not a technical guy, you're a bank fellow. So you have to keep on monitoring the project. Is it on schedule? Have they ordered the equipment that needs to be going in? How is the procurement coming along? How's the engineering coming along? Is it behind? Is it ahead? Are you, and all those factors that are technical, for example, have to be monitored. Any one little delay can have subsequent delays down the cycle. These are all these are fancy things, supply chain and all that stuff. When I went to school, never heard of supply chain. But now everybody turns around, hey, supply chain. Okay, I understand what that means. It's another, I think maybe you can even get a degree in business school in supply chain. I think so. I'm not sure. Something we never heard about. So in the supply chain, if one aspect of the supply chain doesn't, is not fulfilled, we are hearing a lot of this supply chain problem these days, stuff coming from China, for example. And they're saying, well, a lot of the stuff is stuck in the ports in Los Angeles, and on and on and on. There's an interruption in the supply chain. What would that lead to subsequently in the project's completion date, for example? So I can go endlessly. These are just common sense. I'm talking just common sense. There is nothing in the book that is going to give you a long story about it. Just you could pick up some yourself also. So here are some of the roles that can be played by the consultant. If you don't have somebody on board in the bank. Bank just does not have lenders, put a big title of vice president and all that stuff, loan officer. No, they're not. They have technical people. Or you can hire one as a consultant. Okay. Looking at the watch, I can stop here or continue. Let me continue this and take up another interesting subject. You say, well, what happens? Let's take a minute. I'll save time and clean it up now. So I'm very cognizant about time, saving time, and it'll give me time to kind of change gear, because it's going to be different kind of a lecture now from project finance. Okay. Let's talk about loan approval process. You think, Dr. Malik, you've been lecturing about loans and project finance, but we need to know, once we decide on a loan that we want, what happens in the bank? How do we proceed in the bank, and what goes on after we leave the bank? What do they want from us? What can we do? What's the process look like? Behind the scene. So let us go through 6 steps. I think you noted on the board. First of all, is generation. Then we go. The step is preparation. Third step is presentation. You can read it. Fourth step is evaluation. Followed by approval. Lastly, we have documentation. And let's write all of these here. Let's take up one at a time. The loan approval process. First is generation. What does that mean? Simple. You need money. You need capital to do a project. Does it mean you have to run to the bank? That's the first step you have to ask. That's called generation. Does it mean you have to generate the money from the bank? I've taught you two sources of capital: equity and debt, loan. So need for money does not mean run to the bank. Need for money means look at what you want. Do you want to raise it, the money you want, through equity shareholders? Or do you want to run to the bank? You still have the option to run to the bank. But it does not mean you need money, you have to run to the bank. Or you go to the equity market. You have to look at the pros, the benefits of this, what's the benefit of that. The risk involved this, the risk involved that, and on and on and on. So that's the first step. Now you passed the first step, let us say. And you've determined, you've concluded that yes, we want the money, but we want it as a loan. We want to go to the bank and borrow the money. And to go to the bank, well, you have to prepare yourself. That takes up the question of preparation to get borrow the money. You just can't put up a nice suit, that's okay. The bank doesn't look at the suit. Ah, they do. Really, they want to know more than the suit you're wearing. Prepare yourself. So you say, well, okay, what does it mean, prepare yourself, Dr. Malik? How do I prepare? What do I need to do? The thing is, all the banks will be looking at 5 things, all of them. They will be looking at what you and the project from 5 different things. And you say, what are they, man? What are those 5 things? That is, prepare yourself for those 5 things. That's what they're going to look at right away. These are referred to as 5 C's, 5 F-I-V-E, C's, C, just one word, C's of credit, just a nice way. There are 5 things they're going to look at, and they all have to do with the alphabet C. Easy to remember, cute way to remember. What are the 5 things, okay? Always the C, 5 C. They're going to look at the character of the management. Write it down. There's a C, character C. What character are they looking at? This, what are they looking at? What character? That means they're looking at your experience of the management. That's character of the management. Experience of the management. One is characters, 1 C. Have you taken note of it? The second is they're going to look at the financial capacity of the project, of the venture. Financial capacity of the project. If you write it down, then I'll tell you what that means. Financial capacity, another C. C again, capacity. Financial capacity of venture means the capital requirement of the project. How much money does the project need? You have to explain to them, how do you come up with that amount of figure that you need? That's C, capital requirement. That's the second thing. Same as financial capacity to venture means, what is the capital requirement? That's C. If you don't like the word financial capacity, rest try the capital requirement. The amount of money they need for the project. I hope it's clear. Nothing magical. Nothing magical. Collateral, C. What is the quality of the security? And we just talked about quality. Is this all cash flow coming from one well? That's just an example. Security of the what kind of collateral are you offering? Is that something that they can get rid of or sell if you don't pay the loan back easily? Third C would be collateral. The fourth C is the financial condition of the venture. Financial condition, C, condition of the venture. That, if you don't like the condition of the venture, just write on cash flow from the venture. C. You know, financial condition, what kind of cash flow, revenue stream that this project will generate. You know, I hope you appreciate what I'm doing. I should substitute different sentences, different words to say the same thing out of respect to for the foreign students. I just did it. I'm constantly doing it. If you don't like this, or you have a difficulty with this expression or this sentence or this word, I change to another one. Thank God I have the capacity, because I've been through a lot of schooling related to English language. A lot of schooling. In fact, if you ask me, my University of Cambridge, my high school diploma, high school is from the University of Cambridge, signed by the Chancellor of the University of Cambridge. So you're talking pure English. There's a big, I always say there's a big difference between English and American English. Or American is a different language than the English. Oh, heaven's sake. I've been here 50 plus years. When I first came, I said, my goodness, is this English they talk here? No, I'm like everybody here, you know. American language is interesting, different from the English. I'll give you an example, just to make you relax. I never heard, till I came here 50 years when I was a young man. Oh, I was young, believe me, I was. Tall mountains. If I ever use that, they'll fail me in high school. But here, every mountains are tall. No, mountains are not tall. I would be told. Mountains are high. You see the difference? A 6 feet 2 inch fellow is called tall. He's not high. Then we raise corn, wheat, crops. No, sir. Yeah, well, we do. And we raise children. We say, hey, no, sir, you don't. You raise crops. But you bring up children. There's a difference between bringing up and raising. Raise crops, bring up children. Everybody rear children. Heaven's sake, I would be spanked when I would be, if I was rearing children. You rear animals, pigs. Your children are no pigs. You bring up your children with that. Bringing up includes character and personality. Pigs don't have a character there. So you see the fine differences. Now you can see how I struggle with the words now. Thank heavens. I can compare the two and I substitute this word for that. This is just to give you a little flavor apart from Freud. Freud can be a very dull subject, which it is. So I'm trying to add a little fun over here. Let's go for another C. And you say, Dr. Malik, when did you forget the fun, get us out of here? I know you said, there's no time for fun, man. And the lecture, I can see your sentiments. Another condition of the industry, C, condition of the industry petroleum. Remember condition? Sometime back, when I graduated, man, the condition was bad of the industry. I think we had 20-some students in the department where petroleum engineering that went up and up and up and all the way to several hundred. Because $3 a barrel of oil, nobody went to petroleum engineering school. That's what when I was in school here, UT here. By the way, this department is, for me, it's new, although it was built in 1986, the building. No. Well, Department of Petroleum Engineering is what you call now the economics department. You know, you have a economics department, go look it up. It says economics now, it used to be, that was the petroleum engineering department. Then many years later, we have the CPE building and all that stuff. And now that's old. No, okay, anyway, let's get back to the subject here so that you can go home. So condition of the industry, I said. These days, $150 the price of oil. Heavens, everybody and his friend wants to get in. Or in a few months back, you know, it was down and nobody wanted to get in. So the point here is industry, petroleum industry, you know, up and down. Every industry in the world goes up and down. There's not in petroleum. You're not in buying home. My goodness, that real estate, that houses in Austin is on fire. You go look for a house, believe me, there'll be 6 other people buying the same house and everybody asking, giving more money to the seller, $100,000 more. Unbelievable. But not long ago, you couldn't give away freely the houses. So it's a condition, everything, you know, changes. Let's go on. Once you've done the preparation, you just don't sit on it. You make a presentation. And number 3, presentation, presented. Yeah, it's presentation to the bank. Take it to the bank. And the banker will look at the 5 C's, of course. Sometimes we call them the lending officer. He'll review it. Now, please remember, he is an important, very important, extremely important person for you. Why do I say? So give him all the necessary information. Don't think, why are you asking me? Because after you leave, who is speaking on your behalf inside the bank? You're gone. He becomes your spokesperson. So feed him all what he wants. Give him, you know, all the information that he can take to the next level. He's not going to give you the loan. He's going to take the next level of officer. In other words, he's going to sell your loan to somebody else in the bank. And unless you give him all the needed information, how in the world can he ever sell your project? Number 5. So that's what it comes into evaluation. He will evaluate whatever the C's he will evaluate. He make a file, you know, like this, many pages, you know, and put all in the file to take it to the next level. So he has to have all the data in the file, and he'll take it to the next level to get an approval. So that's where the number 5 comes in, approval. Approval can be, we call it the loan package. One senior bank official can sign off on your loan. One. It would have to be a small loan, not a big loan. If it's a bigger loan, whatever the bank decides is a big loan. I can't decide what's the big loan for the bank. Every bank has its own cutoff point, what is small, what is big, and all. Then if it's a bigger loan, several senior officials will sign. And yet if it is even bigger, it'll go to the loan committee. So he will take your case to the loan committee. All banks have loan committees. That is the job, besides other things, to look at the package that you're presenting or he's presenting on your behalf, and they approve or disapprove. Not all loan packages get approved. The committee can lend you up to this much. They all have the limits of how much they're authorized to approve. If that's not enough, and you want a bigger loan, then the whole package, the big package, goes to the board of directors of the bank. Wow, man, that must be a big amount of loan. I'll give you Barclays at that time. Real case. Barclays Bank in the United States, is an English bank, and their North American head office of Barclays was in New York. Still is, I guess. The board of directors, the committee, I said the loan committee was allowed to, at that time, by the bank, the loan committee and the Barclays was allowed to approve a loan up to $20 million. And if the loan was exceeding that $20 million, then the whole package, the pay package, would be sent to London, where the head office, for the board of governors, or the board of directors of the bank would approve that. That's $20 million and above. So you can see, at different stages, getting different amounts of loan approved. Finally, thank God, the word finally has arrived. Everything looks good. And then you have to what? Document it. Everything has to be documented, black and white. What was agreed to by both sides, the covenants, the whole thing. You get your lawyers in, it's legal. If you want to, I suggest you do. The other side gets their lawyer, the bank gets the lawyer, the borrower gets the lawyer, the lender gets the lawyer. Let the lawyers fight it over, change whatever they want to look at it. Looks good, you sign and the bank signs. Case closed. That's it, you got the money. And money you have, the question is, when are you going to give this lecture, Dr. Malik? The answer is right now. Have a good evening, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are, whatever time you're looking at it, and I'll catch you next time. Best of luck to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.